A single drop of sweat traces a path down her spine, chilling her skin beneath the cheap polyester uniform. This isn't a story about a princess in a tower. This is a story about a queen, trapped in an apron, serving lukewarm soup to people who believe their money makes them kings. She didn't know that tonight, her quiet defiance, a few words spoken in a language she loved, would be the key to unlocking her cage. She thought she was just surviving. She had no idea that at the table in the corner, a man with the power to move mountains was listening, and that by morning, her entire world would be changed by a simple note and a ticket to the sky. The Gilded Spoon was a monument to mediocrity. A restaurant that believed dim lighting was a substitute for good food. It existed in that drab, beige space between a chain diner and actual fine dining, charging premium prices for microwaved entrees and attracting a clientele that confused price with class. For Noemi, it was purgatory. She stood by the service station, the industrial-sized coffee machine, hissing like a disgruntled snake. Her feet didn't just ache, they broadcast a dull, throbbing signal of protest that had long since become background noise, like the restaurant's looped soundtrack of instrumental pop hits. At 26, Noemi felt like she was 40. Her reflection in the polished steel of the espresso machine was a stranger, a pale face, tired grey eyes, and blonde hair pulled back so tightly it made her temples hurt. The black and white uniform, with its flimsy gold-painted buttons, was a costume she couldn't wait to rip off. She was a ghost, haunting her own life. And tonight, the restaurant was full of other, louder ghosts. Noemi, Table 7 needs water. Table 4 is asking for you. And where is the side of ranch for Table 11? That was Beth, the shift supervisor, a woman who wielded her minor authority like a battle axe. Beth didn't like her. Noemi was too quiet, too bookish, and had once used the word ephemeral in casual conversation, which Beth had taken as a personal insult. "On it, Beth," Noemi murmured, grabbing the heavy water pitcher. Table 7 was a first date, the silence between the man and woman so awkward it seemed to suck the air out of their immediate vicinity. Table 4 was a family with 2 toddlers who were methodically building a small, sticky mountain out of ketchup packets and torn-up bread. And Table 11 was the problem. They were the Hendersons, or at least, that's what the reservation said. Mr. Henderson was a large man, overflowing his chair, dressed in a golf shirt that was a size too small and a vibrant, offensive shade of lime green. Mrs. Henderson was skeletal, her face pulled tight from too many procedures, her fingers, adorned with rings that looked like small, glittering animals, were wrapped around a martini glass. "Finally," Mr. Henderson snapped as Noemi approached. The ranch was for his steak, a $58 filet mignon, which he had ordered cremated and now wanted to drown in dressing. "My apologies for the wait, sir," Noemi said, her voice a perfect neutral monotone. She'd mastered the art of being present and invisible at the same time. She placed the small white ramekin on the table. "It's about time," he grunted, not looking at her. He slathered the white sauce over the blackened meat. "You know, honey," he said to his wife, "we should have gone to Le Fantôme. They know how to treat people there." Noemi's eye twitched. Le Fantôme was the new, obscenely expensive French restaurant downtown, the one with a 6-month waiting list. The idea of Mr. Henderson trying to navigate that menu was almost funny. "Yes, dear," Mrs. Henderson said, her voice a high, reedy whine. "They probably have real French waiters there, not just this." She waved a dismissive, jewel-encrusted hand in Noemi's general direction. Noemi's smile didn't move. It was her armor. "Will there be anything else, sir, madam?" Go, Mr. Henderson said, waving his own hand, and try to be faster with the check. Nomi retreated. The humiliation was a familiar flavor, metallic and bitter, like aspirin dissolved in water. She didn't let it touch her. She couldn't. Humiliation was a luxury for people who had other options. Nomi had no other options. Her mind drifted, as it always did, to the small, damp apartment waiting for her. It drifted to the stack of medical bills on her kitchen counter, each one a pale blue or stark white reminder of her mother's illness. Her mother Joyce was the reason she was here. Joyce, with her gentle smile and her failing kidneys, was the reason Nomi had traded the libraries of the Sorbonne for the greasy floor of the Gilded Spoon. She had been a star. The star, according to her professors, a linguistic prodigy. She'd won a full scholarship to a prestigious program in Paris for her master's in translation and comparative linguistics. She'd been fluent in French since she was 10, had picked up German and Italian by 20, and was conversational in Swedish and Russian by 22. Her thesis on the syntactic evolution of obscure Occitan dialects was supposed to set a new standard. Then the call had come. The diagnosis, the renal failure, the astronomical cost of American healthcare. The scholarship had no stipend for sick relatives back home. So she'd come home. She'd dropped out, deferring a dream that she now knew would never be resumed. She'd taken the first job that would hire her, a job that didn't require a background check or a resume, a job that paid her in cash tips she could use to buy the next round of prescriptions. A bell chimed from the kitchen. "Order up, Nomi," called Marco, the chef, the one person here who treated her like a human. She blinked, bringing herself back from the cold streets of Paris to the overheated, time-scented air of the kitchen. She plastered the smile back on her face. "Coming, Marco." As she passed the bar, she glanced at the corner booth, table 15. It was her favorite, and her least favorite, table to wait on. It was occupied by a single man. He came in every Tuesday, like clockwork. He was older, perhaps in his early 60s, with a sharp, intelligent face and hair the color of brushed silver. He always wore a simple, dark cashmere sweater, jeans, and impeccably clean sneakers. He never made a fuss. He always ordered the same thing: the salmon, a green salad with dressing on the side, and a glass of sparkling water with a lime. And he always read a physical newspaper. Tonight it was the Financial Times. He looked up as she passed, his eyes a clear, piercing blue. He didn't smile, just gave a brief, respectful nod. Nomi nodded back. He was, she had long since decided, a man of quiet, substantial quality. He tipped exactly 20%, every time, never more, never less. His name, according to his credit card, was A. Redmond. He was her one moment of calm in the chaos. Tonight, however, he wasn't reading his paper. She'd caught him watching table 11, the Hendersons. His gaze was neutral, but his stillness was absolute. He wasn't just observing, he was analyzing. Nomi dismissed the thought, grabbed the plates for table 6, 2 burgers, a chicken sandwich, and a sad-looking Cobb salad, and went back to work. The night was long, and she was already so very tired. But the worst part of her shift was yet to come, and it was sitting at table 11, staring at the dessert menu. An hour later, the restaurant was reaching its peak. The noise level had risen from a murmur to a dull roar. Nomi felt like she was swimming upstream in a river of demands. More bread, more butter, a different wine. This steak is too red. This fish is too fishy. Mr. Henderson at table 11 was predictably drunk. He'd moved from beer to whiskey, and his voice was now loud enough to be heard 3 tables over. Mrs. Henderson had gone from whining to a kind of glazed, silent disapproval, her lipstick a perfect crimson slash in her pale face. "And then I told him," Mr. Henderson boomed. "I said, if you can't handle my offer, you're in the wrong business, pal. I run this town. Everybody knows it." Nomi approached the table, her empty tray held aloft, a practiced shield. "Excuse me, sir. Are we ready to think about dessert? Or perhaps some coffee?" Mr. Henderson focused on her, his eyes glassy. A slow, unpleasant smile spread across his face. "Well, well, well. Look who's back. Little miss. What's your name again?" "I don't care." He pointed a thick finger at the dessert menu. "We," he announced, "want something French." He said the word French as if he were trying to dislodge something from his throat. Something fancy. Like that. Crème brûlée. Crème brûlée, Mrs. Henderson corrected, her voice sharp. "It's crème brûlée, Harold. You sound like an idiot." "I know what I said," he snapped. "You think you're so smart. I want the crème brûlée. And—" He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, boozy whisper. "I want the pâté de foie gras." Noemi blinked. "Sir, the pâté de foie gras is an appetizer. It's not on the dessert menu." "Don't tell me what's on the menu." Henderson slammed his hand on the table, rattling the glasses. "I want it. It's French, ain't it? You go back there and you tell the chef I want the French duck paste and a bottle of your most expensive Dom Perignon." Nomi kept her expression placid. "Sir, we don't carry Dom Perignon. We have a selection of sparkling wines, a Prosecco and a California Brut. This place is a dump," he roared, attracting the attention of the entire restaurant. Beth was looking over from the hostess stand, her face a mask of annoyance, but she made no move to intervene. This was Nomi's problem. "Harold, shut up!" his wife hissed, her cheeks finally colouring. "No, I'm sick of this. I come here, I spend good money, and I can't even get what I want. What's the point of being in a French restaurant if you can't get French stuff?" "Sir, this isn't a French restaurant," Noemi said, her patience finally fraying, the thread snapping. "This is an American bistro, the Gilded Spoon. Our specialty is the cheeseburger." It was a mistake. She knew it as soon as she said it. Henderson's face turned a shade of puce that matched his wife's lipstick. You think you're smart, don't you? With your little uniform and your little tray. You're a waitress, a servant. Your job is to get me what I want. Now, are you going to get my foie gras, or am I going to have to speak to your manager and have you fired?" The restaurant was silent. Even the kitchen sounds seemed to have faded. Nomi could feel every eye in the room on her. The couple on the first date, the family with the kids, and the man in the corner, Mr. Redmond, who was watching her with an unnerving, quiet intensity. His newspaper was folded on his lap. Something inside Nomi, something that had been dormant for 3 long years, flickered to life. It was a cold, clear, and precise anger. She was tired. She was overeducated, underpaid, and had just been called a servant by a man who wanted to eat duck liver pâté for dessert. She set her tray down on the service stand. She stood up straight, her posture changing. The tired, invisible waitress vanished, and in her place stood a Sorbonne academic. She looked directly at Mr. Henderson. When she spoke, her voice was not the neutral, American-accented monotone of Nomi the waitress. It was the voice of Nomi the linguist. Her French was perfect, not just fluent, but academic. The accent was pure, Parisian, the diction flawless. "Monsieur," she began, her voice low and melodic, but sharp as glass. "Je vous ai entendu, et honnêtement, votre tentative de commander en français est aussi offensive que votre chemise. Sir, I have heard you, And honestly, your attempt to order in French is as offensive as your shirt." Henderson, who had been glowering, now looked confused. What did she say?" Noémie didn't look at his wife. She kept her eyes locked on his. "J'ai dit," she continued, "que de demander du pâté pour le dessert démontre une ignorance qui est, franchement, stupéfiante. C'est un crime culinaire. Vous n'êtes pas un homme de classe. Vous êtes un barbare bruyant avec un portefeuille." I said that to ask for pâté for dessert demonstrates an ignorance that is, frankly, staggering. It is a culinary crime. You are not a man of class. You are a loud barbarian with a wallet. "What is she saying?" Henderson demanded, his confusion turning to rage. "Speak English!" Noémie gave him a cold, bright smile. "Pardon, je pensais que vous aimiez la langue française." "Non?" Apology. "I thought you liked the French language, no?" She leaned in, just a fraction. "Et enfin, ce n'est pas Dom Pérignon, c'est Dom Pérignon. Le G est silencieux. Tout comme vous devriez l'être maintenant. And finally, it is not Dom Pérignon. It is Dom Pérignon. The G is silent, just as you should be now." She held his gaze for one more second. Mr. Henderson was speechless, his mouth opening and closing. Mrs. Henderson, to Noémie's immense surprise, let out a sound that was half gasp, half laugh, which she quickly covered with her hand. Noémie stood up to her full height. She turned to Mrs. Henderson and, in her perfect, polite waitress voice, said, "I can highly recommend the apple crumble. It's our most popular item." Then she turned and walked away, picking up her tray as she went. She didn't look at Beth, who was staring at her, mouth agape. She didn't look at the other diners who were now whispering furiously. She only allowed herself one glance at table 15. Mr. Redmond was not looking at her. He was looking at Mr. Henderson. And for the first time all night, the man in the cashmere sweater was smiling. It was not a kind smile. It was a smile of pure, predatory appreciation. Noémie's heart was hammering so hard she thought it would break a rib. She knew, with a sickening certainty, that she had just been fired. Noémie spent the next 30 minutes in a state of suspended terror. She hid in the alcove by the kitchen, sorting silverware with trembling hands, waiting for Beth to descend with the axe. Every time the kitchen door swung open, she flinched. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson left in a storm of muttered curses and icy silence. Mr. Henderson threw a $20 bill on the table for a $300 check and stormed out, his wife trailing behind him like a brittle shadow. Noémie didn't care. She was already calculating how long she could float the rent before she was evicted. She was calculating the cost of her mother's next dialysis treatment. The numbers spun in her head, a dizzying, nauseating kaleidoscope of panic. "Noémie!" Beth's voice cut through the haze. Noémie closed her eyes. Here it was. She turned, her face pale, readying her apology, her plea, her tiny remaining shard of dignity. "Table 15 just left," Beth snapped, oblivious to the drama Noémie was expecting. "He paid cash. Go clear it, and then you can start your side work. Mop the back." She hadn't been fired. The relief was so sudden and so absolute that Noémie felt her knees go weak. She hadn't been fired. Beth must not have heard or understood the exchange. Or, more likely, she despised the Hendersons more than she disliked Noémie. "Yes, Beth, right away." She grabbed her cleaning cloth and bus tub and headed to the corner booth. Table 15, Mr. Redmond's table. The table was immaculate, as always. He had stacked his plates neatly, his napkin was folded, the water glass was empty, and on top of the folded Financial Times there was a thick, black leather billfold. He had paid in cash, Our $100 bill lay neatly tucked inside for his $48 meal. Nomi sighed. A $50 tip. He was a kind man, after all. She started to reach for the billfold to take it to the cash register, but she stopped. Tucked under the edge of the newspaper, there was something else. A small, square, incredibly thick card. It was not a business card. It was heavy, cream-colored cardstock with a deckled edge. Engraved at the top was a single, stylized letter R above the name Aura Fly. Below it, written in a strong, clear, black-inked hand, was a message. It wasn't a note, it was a set of instructions. Your talent is wasted here. I have a problem in Paris, and I believe you are the solution. Be at the Aura Fly private terminal, Westchester County Airport, tomorrow at 7 a.m. A car will be waiting for you at 5:30 a.m. at the end of your street. It will be a black Mercedes, license 22 Robert. Do not be late. Nomi read it once, then a second time. Her blood ran cold. This was a joke, a prank. It had to be. A sick, cruel joke. Westchester County Airport, a private terminal. She looked back at the table. Her eyes fell on something she had missed, half hidden by the folded newspaper. It was a thin, elegant envelope, matching the card. Her name, Nomi, was written on it in the same black ink. Her fingers, still shaking, fumbled with the seal. She pulled out the contents. It was not a letter. It was a ticket, or rather a flight confirmation. It was for a private Gulfstream G650, departing from HPN, Westchester, and arriving at LBG, Le Bourget, Paris. Passenger, Nomi Kendall. Departure, 7:30 a.m. This was not a joke. She sank into the booth, her legs giving out. She stared at the card, then at the ticket. A car, a black Mercedes, license 22 Robert. This was specific. This was real. I have a problem in Paris, and I believe you are the solution. What problem? What solution? He had heard her speaking French. He'd seen her. What? Insult a customer. That was her great talent. She thought about the man, his quiet confidence, his cashmere sweater that probably cost more than her car, the Financial Times, the $52 tip. This was not the kind of man who played pranks on waitresses. This was the kind of man who bought companies, who moved markets, who flew private. The restaurant, the noise, the smells. It all faded away. She was holding a key, a heavy, terrifying, impossible key. To what? A new life? Or a new kind of prison? She thought about her mother. She thought about the bills. She thought about the rest of her life, mopping floors and serving ranch dressing to men like Harold Henderson. A black Mercedes. Tried it at 5:30 a.m. She looked at her watch. It was 10:45 p.m. She had less than 7 hours to decide. Nomi folded the card and the ticket, her hands surprisingly steady. She slid them into the pocket of her apron. She picked up the billfold, took the $100 bill, and walked to the cash register. She rang up the sale, her movements automatic. She left the $52 tip on the table. She grabbed the mop and headed to the back. As she pushed the dirty water across the grimy tile floor, a new, wild energy hummed beneath her skin. It wasn't just fear. It wasn't just hope. It was the electrifying, terrifying thrill of a gamble. For the first time in 3 years, Nomi wasn't thinking about her past. She was thinking about her future, and it started at 5:30 a.m. The walk home was a blur. Nomi lived in a part of town that was politely called transitional, which meant the landlords hadn't fixed the broken streetlights. She usually clutched her keys between her fingers, her heart pounding at every shadow. Tonight, she barely noticed. The 3-pound weight of the heavy cardstock in her pocket was all she could think about. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor of a walk-up that always smelled of stale cigarettes and boiled cabbage. She let herself in, the deadbolt sticking, as always. The small space was her sanctuary and her cell. In one corner was her living room, a lumpy second-hand armchair and a leaning tower of books. In the other was her kitchen, a hot plate, a mini-fridge and a sink. On the small chipped formica counter was the stack, the blue envelopes from the hospital, the red final notice envelopes from the power company, and in the center, a framed photograph of her mother, Joyce, taken 5 years ago, before the illness. She was smiling, her eyes bright, her hands in a garden. Nomi stared at the photo. "What am I doing, Mom?" she whispered. She pulled the card and the ticket from her pocket and laid them on the counter next to the bills. It was a stark contrast, the symbols of her hopeless debt and the symbols of an impossible escape. A problem in Paris. What did that mean? What did he want from her? Was this dangerous? Was he some kind of high-class criminal, a human trafficker? She was a linguist, not a fool. She knew how the world worked. Men like Mr. Redmond didn't just hand out private jet tickets to waitresses for no reason. There was always a price. And yet, he called her talent a solution. He hadn't seen her as a servant. He had seen her as something else. He had seen the one part of her she thought was dead, the sharp, educated, powerful mind she kept hidden under her apron. He hadn't offered her a job as a nanny or a companion. He'd offered her a problem. She sat in the armchair, the springs groaning in protest. She closed her eyes. She let herself, for one moment, imagine it. Waking up somewhere that wasn't here, using her brain, not just her feet. Speaking French again, not as a party trick or a weapon, but as a tool. What was the alternative? Staying. She'd just barely avoided being fired tonight. What about next time? How long could she keep this up before she broke? The doctors had said her mother's condition was manageable, but the treatments were endless. The debt was a living thing, a monster that grew in the dark, and it was eating her alive. The risk of staying was known. It was a slow, grinding erosion of her soul, ending in her own manageable but bleak existence. The risk of going was a complete unknown. It was a jump into a dark abyss. But what if, at the bottom, there wasn't a crash? What if there was a net? What if he was telling the truth? She stood up. Her movements were now crisp, decisive. She walked to her tiny closet. She had one good outfit, a pair of dark wool trousers, a simple white silk blouse, and a black blazer, her old interview suit from her university days. It was clean. It would have to do. She pulled her only piece of luggage, a small carry-on-sized duffel bag, from under her bed. Into it, she packed her suit, 2 other shirts, her toiletries, and her laptop, her last real valuable, containing her unfinished thesis. She wrote a note to her neighbor, Mrs. Petrova, asking her to check on her cat, Balthazar, a scrawny stray she fed on the fire escape. She taped it to her door. She sat at her counter, paid the electric bill online, and transferred the last $200 in her account to her mother's. It left her with $41.72. She looked at the clock. 4:15 a.m. She showered, the water pressure weak and lukewarm. She dressed in her best jeans, a clean sweater, and her worn-out boots. She packed the wool suit in the duffel. She would not arrive looking like a charity case. She would arrive looking ready for whatever this was. At 5:15 a.m., she stood by her window, looking down at the dark, empty street. She was terrified. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold her duffel bag. She felt sick. This was insane. She was going to be murdered. She was a fool. At 5:29 a.m., she was about to turn away, to unpack, to call the restaurant and beg for the morning shift. And then it happened. A car turned the corner. It was silent, a black panther gliding over the asphalt. A Mercedes S-Class, freshly washed, its black paint gleaming under the single working streetlight. It slowed and stopped, directly at the end of her street. The license plate was impossible to see from her window. Nomi's heart was in her throat. She could stay. She could lock the deadbolt, climb back into bed, and in 20 years, she would still be in this apartment, telling herself the story of the one time she almost did something crazy. Or she could go. She grabbed her bag, unlocked her door, and ran down the stairs. She stepped out into the pre-dawn chill. The air was sharp, smelling of cold pavement. The black car sat there, idling, a cloud of white exhaust pluming from its tailpipe. She walked towards it, her boots clicking, the only sound on the street. She stopped 10 feet away, her breath catching. She could see the plate now, illuminated by its own small light. 22, Robert. The back door opened. From the inside, a man in a black suit with an earpiece stepped out. He was built like a refrigerator. He did not smile. "Ms. Kendall." His voice was professional, flat. Nomi could only nod. "Mr. Redmond is expecting you. We are on a tight schedule." He took her duffel bag from her hand. It looked like a child's toy in his massive grip, and placed it in the trunk. He held the back door open for her. Inside, it was a different world. Warm, quiet, and smelling of rich leather. On the seat opposite her, there was a bottle of Fiji water, a copy of the Wall Street Journal, and a hot coffee in a thermal cup. Nomi slid in. The door closed with a heavy, satisfying thunk, and the world outside, the cabbage smell, the broken lights, the stack of blue bills, vanished. The car pulled away from the curb, accelerating smoothly. Nomi looked back, just once, at the grey, sleeping form of her apartment building. Then she turned, faced forward, and took a sip of the coffee. It was the best coffee she had ever tasted. The Westchester County Airport was not like JFK or LaGuardia. There was no bustling main terminal, no long security lines, no screaming children. The black Mercedes bypassed all of it, pulling up to a sleek, modern, glass and steel building marked Aura Fly. It looked more like a luxury bank than an airport. The driver, who had not spoken another word, opened her door. "Someone will meet you inside, Miss Kendall." Nomi stepped out, her old duffel bag retrieved by the driver and set gently on the curb. She felt hopelessly out of place in her jeans and her 5-year-old boots. The glass doors slid open automatically. A woman was standing there, waiting for her. She was in her late 40s, with dark hair pulled into a severe, elegant chignon. She wore a tailored grey pantsuit that screamed Prada, and a look of crisp, no-nonsense efficiency. "Ms. Kendall, I am Genevieve, Mr. Redmond's executive assistant. You are precisely on time." "Good." Her handshake was firm and brief. "We'll take your bag. Please follow me." A porter, dressed in the same Aura Fly uniform, appeared and took Nomi's duffel. Nomi felt a pang of anxiety. Her laptop was in there, but Genevieve was already moving. "We have a slight wait," Genevieve said, checking a tablet. "Mr. Redmond is concluding a call. He has asked that you be made comfortable." She led Nomi not into a crowded gate, but into a private lounge. It was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a runway, where sleek, white private jets were parked like expensive sports cars. The furniture was minimalist, the art was original, and a small stocked bar and breakfast buffet stood in one corner. They were the only 2 people there. "Coffee? Croissant?" Genevieve asked. I'm fine, thank you," Nomi said. Genevieve raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Redmond believes in preparation, Ms. Kendall. That includes sustenance. You have a long flight. Eat. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command, albeit a polite one. Nomi, feeling like a disobedient child, went and got a croissant and another coffee. As she sat, Genevieve sat opposite her. Mr. Redmond has asked me to provide you with this. She handed Nomi a slim, silver iPad. It is a briefing dossier. He expects you to have absorbed it before you land in Paris. Nomi took the tablet. The screen lit up. The file was password protected. Genevieve typed it in. The file was titled LeBlanc, A. LeBlanc? Nomi said, confused. Who is that? That, Miss Kendall, is your problem, or rather the key to it. But first, Genevieve scrolled to a different file. There is this. She tapped the screen. A new file opened. It was titled Kendall S. Noemi's blood froze. It was her. It was a photo of her, a grainy one, taken from her old university ID. Below it was everything. Her full name, her date of birth, her parents' names, her mother's medical history, her social security number, her scholarship to the Sorbonne, her unfinished thesis, Voix perdue, the lingual evolution of Occitan poetry, her GPA, her bank account balance, 41 tos 17, her last 3 addresses, and at the bottom a short video file. Genevieve tapped it. Noemi watched, horrified, as the screen played a recording from a security camera. It was from last night, at the Gilded Spoon. It was her, standing at table 11, speaking to Mr. Henderson. The audio was surprisingly clear. Vous êtes un barbare bruyant avec un portefeuille. Genevieve switched it off. Her face was unreadable. Mr. Redmond is thorough. He has interests in the security company that outfits many New York restaurants. He was alerted to the audio spike in your section, specifically the shift in language. He ran your image through a facial recognition search, and here we are. Noemi was speechless. This was a violation. He hadn't just seen her. He had investigated her. In the span of an hour, he had dismantled her entire life, dug up all her secrets, all her failures. He knows, Noemi whispered, about my mother. He knows, Genevieve confirmed, her voice softening by a fraction of a degree, that you are motivated, that you are bound by duty, and that you are unencumbered by other attachments. This makes you a high-risk, high-reward asset. An asset, Noemi repeated, the word tasting like metal. We are all assets, Ms. Kendall. Some of us just have more utility than others. Mr. Redmond believes your utility is exceptional. A side door opened, and the man from the corner booth walked in. In person, away from the dim restaurant lighting, Oakley Redmond was more imposing. He was not tall, but he had an energy, a density, that made the room seem to revolve around him. He was on the phone, a small, discreet Bluetooth earpiece in his ear. "No, Lars, that's not acceptable," he said, his voice calm and lethal. "You tell Gunnar that if the bid isn't on my desk by 4 p.m. Zurich time, I'm pulling the whole offer. Yes, I mean it." He listened. "Fine." He tapped his earpiece, ending the call. He looked at Nomi. His blue eyes assessed her, from her worn boots to her pale face. "Ms. Kendall," he said. He did not smile. "You came?" "I'm here," Nomi said, her voice shaky. "Good. Genevieve, did you give her the dossier?" "She has it now, sir." "Excellent." He turned back to Nomi. "You have 6 hours. The file on LeBlanc A is the problem. The file on Kendall S is why I believe you are the solution. When we land at Le Bourget, I expect you to have a coherent plan." A plan? For what? I don't even know what this is." Oakley Redmond looked at his watch, a simple, thin Patek Philippe. "This, Miss Kendall, is a hostile takeover, or more accurately, a rescue mission. I am trying to acquire Maison Lefebvre, a French technology conglomerate. The board is split. The deciding vote, the 30% swing vote, is held by its founder and CEO, Antoine Leblanc. He is 78 years old. He is a traditionalist, a patriot, and he hates me. He hates American money. He hates corporate raiders. He refuses to meet with me. He refuses to take my calls. He is, in short, a stubborn old fool who is about to run his own company into the ground rather than sell it to me. So, Noemi asked, her mind racing, "What does this have to—" "Mr. Leblanc," Oakley interrupted, "has one weakness. A passion. He has spent the last 40 years and a considerable fortune searching for the only living relative he has, a grandniece who was lost in the foster system after her parents died. He has failed. I have not." He nodded at the iPad. "I found her. 3 weeks ago. She is living in a rural village in the Dordogne region. Her name is Anya. She is 24 years old. And this is the critical part. She speaks almost no modern French." Noemi's eyes widened. "What?" "Her adoptive family, her community, they are revivalists. They speak only English and an ancient, nearly dead dialect of Occitan." Noemi's heart stopped. She knew that dialect. It was the subject of her thesis. It was the voix perdue, lost voices, she had been studying. Oakley Redmond allowed himself a small, thin smile. "Yes, the dialect you wrote 80,000 words about before you had to go home and start serving cheeseburgers." I don't understand," Noemi stammered. "What do you want me to do?" "It's simple," Redmond said, picking up his own tablet as Genevieve gestured toward the door. "We're going to see Anya. You are going to talk to her. You are going to be her bridge to this world. And then you and Anya are going to go and meet her great-uncle. You aren't going to talk about business. You are not going to mention my name. You are going to give that old man the one thing he's ever wanted, his family. And in return," Redmond said, his voice dropping, "he will give me the one thing I want, his company. Anya is the key. But you, Miss Kendall, you are the one who can turn it." He turned and walked toward the jet, which was now being prepped on the tarmac. "You have 6 hours," he called back over his shoulder. "Become an expert." Noemi stood frozen for a moment, the iPad heavy in her hands. A hostile takeover, a lost relative, an ancient dialect. She looked at Genevieve, who simply nodded toward the door. "The flight is this way, Miss Kendall." Noemi took a deep breath, and for the second time that day, she walked into an entirely new world. The Gulfstream G650 was not an airplane. It was a missile wrapped in a luxury apartment. The interior was all cream leather, dark, polished wood, and brushed nickel. There was a full queen-sized bed in a private stateroom, a shower, and a galley that looked better equipped than the kitchen at the Gilded Spoon. Oakley Redmond took a seat at a 4-person table, opened a laptop, and vanished into a world of spreadsheets. He did not speak to her again for the entire flight. Genevieve, after offering her a meal, which turned out to be a 5-star lobster salad, sat at her own station and typed silently. This left Noemi alone. She sat in a plush leather seat that was more comfortable than her bed at home. She opened the iPad. For 6 hours, she worked. The file on Antoine Leblanc was a psychological and biographical masterpiece. His habits, his favorite foods, his military service, his deceased wife, a poet, his love for a specific brand of Armagnac. He was a man of intense, rigid principles. The file on Anya was more heartbreaking. Photos of a young, shy-looking woman with long, dark hair. She was pictured working in a garden, baking bread in an old-style communal oven. She lived in a community that had, in the 1970s, rejected modern France and reverted to a pre-industrial, agricultural lifestyle. They were not religious. They were historical. They were eccentrics, and the dialect they had resurrected. Noemi knew it. She had charts for it. She had translated texts from it that hadn't been seen in 300 years. Redmond's team had done the hard part. They had the DNA tests, the birth certificates, the paper trail that proved irrefutably that Anya was Antoine Leblanc's grandniece. But they hadn't been able to talk to her. She was terrified of outsiders. The file detailed 3 failed attempts by Redmond's French-speaking lawyers to make contact. They had been politely but firmly turned away. That's where Noemi came in. As the jet began its descent, the soft chime ringing, Noemi felt a new kind of confidence. This she could do. This wasn't waiting tables. This was a puzzle. A human, linguistic, and cultural puzzle. They landed at Le Bourget. No customs, no lines. A black Bentley was waiting on the tarmac. Redmond, Genevieve, and Noemi were driven, not to Paris, but to a helicopter. Within 30 minutes, they were airborne again, thudding south over the green, tiled patchwork of the French countryside. "We land in a field a half-kilometre from her village," Redmond shouted over the rotors. "They have no phones, no electricity. Genevieve and I will stay with the helicopter. This is on you, Kendall." He handed her a small, powerful satellite phone. "For emergencies. Do not fail." The helicopter landed. Noemi stepped out, her old boots sinking into the soft mud of a pasture. The air smelled of damp earth, wood smoke, and lavender. It was quiet. She walked for 10 minutes, following a simple dirt path. The village was a cluster of stone houses. It was like walking into the 17th century. A woman who looked like she was from a Vermeer painting was hanging laundry. Noemi saw her, Anya. She was sitting on a stone bench, mending a piece of fabric. Noemi approached slowly. She did not speak. She sat on the other end of the bench. For 5 minutes, they sat in silence. Anya watched her, not with fear, but with simple, profound curiosity. Finally, Noemi spoke. She did not use modern French. She did not use English. She used the dialect. A greeting, a formal, archaic, and beautiful greeting. "Bona vespra, Madonna. Lo solel es dus ue." "Good evening, milady. The sun is sweet today." Anya's head snapped up. Her eyes, a deep, clear brown, went wide with shock. She dropped her mending. She replied, her voice hesitant, rusty. "Vos parlats? La lenga." "You speak the language?" "Un pauc." Noemi smiled. "A little. My name is Noemi. I have come a long way to speak with you." For the next 2 hours they talked. Noemi did not mention Antoine Leblanc. She did not mention Oakley Redmond. She talked about Anya, her life, her dreams. She talked about poetry, the very poetry her voix perdues had sung. Anya's great-grandmother, it turned out, had taught her the poems. Noemi translated them, on the spot, back into English, then into modern French, showing Anya how her lost language connected to the world. Anya was brilliant. She was not uneducated. She was educated differently. Finally, Noemi told her, "There is a man, an old man in Paris. He is your family, your mother's family. He is very sad and very lonely. He has been looking for you." Anya was terrified. Paris was the city, a place of sin and noise. "I will be with you," Noemi said, taking her hand, and for the first time, she believed it. "I will be your voice. I will not let anything happen to you." Anya looked at this stranger who spoke the language of her heart. She nodded. When Noemi returned to the helicopter, Anya was with her, carrying a small, hand-woven bundle. Oakley Redmond simply nodded. "Well done, Kendall." The meeting was set for the next day, at Leblanc's Parisian estate. It was not a business meeting. It was afternoon tea. The estate was old, formal, and intimidating. Antoine Leblanc was a small, bird-like man, with eyes as sharp as his tailored suit. He looked at Redmond with open contempt, at Nomi with dismissal, and at Anya with a devastating, heart-breaking hope. He and Anya just stared at each other. The room was suffocatingly silent. Leblanc spoke first, in harsh, formal French. "So, you claim this child is my blood. A trick. Another American trick. Tell him," Redmond muttered to Noemi, "that the DNA is—" "Shh," Noemi said. She ignored them both. She turned to Anya, who was trembling. "Anya," she said, in Occitan, "do you remember the poem? The one your great-grandmother taught you? The one about the lost boat?" Anya nodded. "Tell it to him," Noemi said. Anya looked at the old man. Her voice, small but clear, began to recite the verse. It was a simple, mournful poem. Antoine Leblanc froze. His hand, reaching for his tea, stopped mid-air. Noemi, speaking softly in modern French, translated for him, her voice weaving in and out of Anya's. "I am a boat, lost from the shore. Un bateau, perdu de la riba. My sail is torn, my oar is gone. Ma vela es trista, mon rem es anar." Leblanc's eyes filled with tears. He stood up, his legs shaking. He walked over to Anya. He interrupted her, his voice cracking, reciting the next line of the poem, in the same perfect, archaic Occitan dialect. "Mas memori de l'aiga blava," he whispered, "but I remember the blue water." Anya stopped, stunned. "It was my wife's favorite," Leblanc wept, his iron formality shattering. "She was from the Dordogne. She taught it to me." He didn't need a DNA test. He didn't need a lawyer. He had his proof. He collapsed into his chair, pulling Anya with him, holding her hand as if he would never let go. He looked over her head at Oakley Redmond. The hatred was gone. In its place was a look of gratitude. "Whatever you want," Leblanc said, his voice thick. "Whatever you want. You brought me my family." Redmond nodded. "We can discuss the details tomorrow, Antoine. Today is for you." As they left, Redmond's team already preparing the contracts, the billionaire put a hand on Nomi's shoulder. It was the first time he had touched her. "Ms. Kendall," he said, "I believe you are underpaid." Nomi smiled. "I believe I am, too, Mr. Redmond." The victory was absolute. The acquisition of Maison Lefebvre went through smoothly, sending a shockwave through the European tech world. Oakley Redmond was the new king, and Antoine Leblanc, with his grandniece Anya now living with him in Paris, and being gently, patiently tutored by Noemi, was a happy man. Redmond hosted a massive, impromptu celebratory gala at the Musée Rodin, which he had apparently rented out for the evening. The gardens were lit, champagne flowed, and the most powerful people in Paris were all there, desperate to meet the American shark who had just conquered France. Nomi was there too. She was no longer a waitress, no longer a translator. Redmond had, in one 10-minute negotiation, made her his new head of special communications. It was a vague title, but it came with a salary that had 2 commas in it, a penthouse apartment in the 8th arrondissement, and a medical benefits package that would fly her mother to the best hospital in the world. She stood on a terrace overlooking the garden, a glass of champagne in her hand. She was wearing a deep blue, floor-length gown, a gift from Genevieve that had arrived that afternoon. She had never worn anything so beautiful. Her hair was down, and she felt, for the first time, like she belonged. A long way from the gilded spoon, eh, Kendall? Oakley Redmond was beside her, a rare, genuine smile on his face. "A very long way, sir," Nomi said. "Don't call me sir. Call me Oakley. You've earned it." He raised his glass. "To solutions." "To solutions," Nomi echoed. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I believe there's a certain Swedish competitor of mine who I'd like to gloat to. Enjoy the party." He walked off, swallowed by a crowd of admirers. Nomi watched him go, then turned back to the garden. "So, this is your new weapon, Redmond. A waitress?" The voice was like gravel. It was spoken in English, with a sharp Scandinavian accent. Nomi turned. A man was standing there. He was tall, blonde, and looked like a Viking who had been forced into a very expensive tuxedo. He was glaring at Oakley's retreating back. He had not apparently realized Oakley had already left. "I'm sorry," Nomi said. The man focused on her, his eyes cold and dismissive. "I am Lars Gunnar. I was supposed to buy Lefebvre. Before your new boss," he spat the word, "swooped in with his American tricks." He looked her up and down. "And you, a new assistant? You weren't at the negotiations." Nomi recognized the name. Lars Gunnar. This was the man Oakley was on the phone with, the Swedish competitor. "I am a consultant," Nomi said. "A consultant," Gunnar sneered. "I see. He finds a pretty face, dresses her up, and thinks she can—" "What?" "Distract me." He took a step closer. "It won't work. I'm going to break Redmond. I'm going to find his weakness, and I'm going to tear him apart. And you'll be right back to serving coffee, darling." He was inches from her face, a bully trying to intimidate her. He was Mr. Henderson, but with better tailoring and $1 billion. Nomi did not back up. She did not flinch. She just listened. She listened to his accent, the cadence of his speech, the specific way he formed his vowels. And then she smiled. She set her champagne flute down on the balustrade. She looked him directly in the eye. And she spoke. Not in English. Not in French. She spoke in flawless, accent-perfect Swedish. "Herr Gunnar, du borde vara försiktig," she said, her voice as calm and cool as a fjord. "Mr. Gunnar, you should be careful." Lars Gunnar stopped. His smug expression dissolved. He looked at her as if she had just grown a second head. Noemi continued, her Swedish smooth and rapid. "En man som bara ser en klänning och inte hjärnan inuti är en man som alltid kommer att förlora. A man who only sees a dress and not the mind within is a man who will always lose." She leaned in, just as she had to Mr. Henderson. "Oakley Redmond har inga svagheter, men du? Din arrogans är en vidöppen dörr. Jag kunde köra en lastbil genom den. Oakley Redmond has no weaknesses. But you? Your arrogance is a wide-open door. I could drive a truck through it." Lars Gunnar was pale. He was utterly, completely speechless. Noemi smiled, a bright, dangerous smile. "Ha en trevlig kväll," she said. "Have a nice evening." She picked up her champagne, turned her back on the frozen, sputtering Billionaire, and walked away. From across the lawn she saw Oakley Redmond. He had been watching the entire exchange. He hadn't heard what she said. He didn't need to. He just saw the look on his rival's face. He raised his glass to her, his smile one of pure, predatory delight. He hadn't even known she spoke Swedish. Nomi raised her glass back. She was no one's weapon. She was no one's asset. She was the solution. Months later, her mother, Joyce, was sitting in a sun-drenched private room at the American Hospital of Paris, arguing with a nurse about the quality of the hydrangeas. She was, in short, back to her old self. Nomi, meanwhile, was not at a party. She was in a boardroom in Tokyo, sitting to the right of Oakley Redmond. "The Japanese partners are firm," Genevieve whispered. They refuse to budge on the distribution rights. They say it's a matter of cultural honor. Oakley sighed, looking at Nomi. Kendall, any ideas? Nomi opened her folder. Actually, yes, she said, her eyes bright. Their lead negotiator. He wrote his university thesis on 14th century Waka poetry. I think, she smiled, I know where to start. And that's how a voice, silenced by hordship, found its power again. Nomi's story isn't just about a jet ticket or a fancy dress. It's about the fact that your true worth is never defined by your job title or your bank account. It's hidden in your mind, in your skills, in the talents that you've cultivated in secret. She was always a queen. She just needed to be out of the apron to finally get her crown. The world is full of Hendersons and Gunners who will try to tell you you're just a waitress. The question is, are you ready to show them what else you are? What did you think of Noemi's epic comeback? Do you think Oakley Redmond was a savior or just a new kind of user? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement is what keeps these stories coming. And if you loved this story, please show your support. It means the world to me. Go ahead and hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own hidden power. And most importantly, click subscribe and ring that bell. You won't want to miss the next story we have in store. Thanks for listening.